Hello
Hello.
there. Hey, how you doing?
Hi. Hey. Oh, so you can hear me right away. This is good.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, nice clear
Yeah.
connection. How you
Nice.
doing?
Yeah, and you're in too. I'm doing great.
You're doing great. Okay, cool. Hey,
Yeah.
I wanted to get some feedback on as we're creating, each of us are creating our own podcast. I want to get some feedback on what you think about my theme. Um, 'Cause I get,
In general, like the visual theme or
yeah,
just
yeah, like
theme in
the
general.
avatar, like the balloon theme that I came up with. Um,
I like it. I'd like to hear more about like why you came up with it, because I know that you're into ballooning now, and
well,
so
yeah, well,
just
actually,
curious.
very recently, it turns out an old friend of mine I used to work with has a balloon company up in Asheville, North Carolina, and I went for my first balloon ride. And he
Nice.
actually offered
Nice.
to teach me how to fly balloons so that I could become one of his pilots on the
Oh,
side.
cool. Yeah.
And then about that
Hmm.
same time, you and I've been talking about each of us starting up a podcast, and so
Right.
looking for the podcast platform. We're using Podbean now, and then seeing that we can have our own webpage on the Podbean site, and okay, well, we need a
Right.
theme, we need a logo. I need,
A
we each got to come up
lot of
with
work that
something.
goes into it. Yeah. A
Yeah, a
lot of
lot of
thought
work
goes
goes
into it.
into it, but I like it because I've been doing this
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
fun.
graphics and website stuff for like 20 years. So I immediately went to look for something with a balloon theme.
Mm.
And I don't know why, except I really, really, really enjoyed the ballooning. And so
Wow.
I came up with a really beautiful picture, and
Yeah, it is good.
it resembles about like where I'm looking to move, which is Western North Carolina. So, the way the
Yeah.
mountains look, the way the balloons
Yeah.
look, the
Ah. So law
and
of attraction thing going on here.
well, the thing is I didn't know how I was going to connect it to the theme of profound self-help, because profound self-help was an idea I had
Right.
back in like 2011 that I tried to get off the ground.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't think podcasting was very normal back then, like almost 10 years
Right.
ago. The
Oh yeah,
tools weren't
it's
there.
still kind of new technically.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then of course, in the last 10 years, a lot has changed in my life. A lot of intense growth. Even at that time, it was intense growth from where I was then to where I am today. It's
Right.
like, okay, to resurrect the idea of profound self-help instead of as a written like blog, it's like, hey, I think it might be easier and faster to create content as a podcast, and then also it can be done quicker because it takes a
Oh
lot
yeah.
longer to
Hmm.
type things out and get the grammar correct. So
Sure. Yeah.
so
Right. Oh yeah, it comes out a lot quicker.
yeah, it's you don't have to worry so much about syntax and stuff. And whatever it
Yeah.
is, it
Right.
is. You can't go back and erase what I just said and get the grammar just
Exactly.
perfect and cross the T's and dots the I's.
Yeah, I like
So
that aspect of it though. I really like that. Doesn't have
so
to be perfect.
yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. So um, now it's like I really like the balloon picture I came up with, the one that I'm using right now. I really like
Right.
the profound self-help, which to me
Hmm.
means, it's life is a journey. It's, in my opinion, it's best to have a life where you're continuously learning. I would call
Hmm.
self-help
Right.
that learning process. Whatever I'm
Right. Right.
doing to learn more about life, that's helping
Hmm.
me. And then to do it in a profound way instead of just cookie cutter copying what other people are doing. It's like, no, what's
Right.
what's original to me coming from my vision. And then I'm looking at the
Right.
balloons and I'm going, how do I tie? Why did I pick the balloons? Because I was really
Hmm.
struggling. Uh, there
Yeah.
had to be a reason why I picked the balloons. There had to be. Okay. And
Man, yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
it took about 2 weeks for it to pop in my head.
Something subtle. It's so subtle, but it's amazing, like how things can, you know, get to you like that, or get into your subconscious like that somehow. But yeah, go
Yes.
ahead. Yeah, I'm
Oh, yeah,
interested.
yeah. So,
Fascinating.
so there was a reason why I picked the balloons, and I realized it. Perhaps it was an intuition, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it that, an insight. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, here's the reason, and it's
Right.
to me, it's like so perfect. Okay.
It's profound.
Okay. Think of the balloon as an idea. The balloon is an
Ooh,
idea. And don't we call those things trial balloons
yeah.
in our language? We call a new idea like a trial balloon.
Okay.
So what I learned from ballooning in my limited experience of one flight, and then some YouTube videos I'd watch about it,
Hmm.
when you go in a balloon, you don't know where it's going to land.
No, there's
When
no
you
guarantees where that's landing.
Yeah, you don't know where it's going to land because you're totally at the mercy of the wind. The only thing you can do is change altitude to catch different winds.
Yep.
Other than that,
Yep.
you
Yep.
you don't know where you're going to land unless there's no wind. Then you know where you're going to land, exactly where you took off.
Straight down.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's not a
Right.
normal day.
No.
so so the
Hmm.
so the balloon is an idea,
Okay.
and an idea that you want to run with is an idea that I want to run with directs my energy. A balloon
Okay.
is full of energy. It's full of heat energy. It comes to life. The balloon erects. It comes to life. It's ready to take off because of the energy
Okay.
that's put into the
Okay.
balloon that makes it lighter than air.
Okay.
Okay,
All
same thing
right. I
with the
see. Yeah. Yeah.
idea. It
Right.
becomes
Okay.
energy that takes off. Um,
Yeah. It has some life to it. Exactly.
yeah, it lifts off on its own. It takes on a life of its own, but
You breathe life into it.
the idea. Um, it's like energy is looking at the idea and going, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Like the idea is the legs, and the
Mhm.
creator of the idea is the eyes. It's like I can come
Okay.
up with all these ideas, but if I
This is
don't have
good. Yeah.
energy, if I don't have energy, I can't do anything with it.
Exactly. Well. Yeah.
Or
Go ahead. Yeah.
if I come up with an idea, but it's not energizing, it just sits
Yeah.
there. It just fizzles away. It's like, oh, well, because in my own maybe rational
Hmm.
thinking or experience, I go, no, that's actually a bad idea. That would never fly.
Right.
So, yeah, the balloon is a metaphor for an idea. Um,
Right.
and so let's see. And then there's multiple balloons there. So it might be I'm working like you might be one of the other balloons. We might have a
Okay.
similar idea. We're each starting a podcast now,
Oh
but
yeah.
we have a similar
Right.
idea, but we have separate balloons, and we're each piloting our own idea based in part on our vision for
Right.
where we want to land.
Okay.
Okay. But
Yeah.
because we're both looking to share for the benefit of the people
Hmm.
that are listening and for the benefit of
Right.
ourselves engaging in this um, friendly conversation talking about life,
Okay.
we're
Right.
we're starting essentially in the same place, the same field that we're launching the balloon in. We
Okay.
don't know we're not going to land in the same place. Um,
Right. Okay.
because we're
That's
seeking
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're seeking to do good, we're seeking to help, not hurt. The
Correct.
landscape we're flying over is beautiful.
Ah, I love your analogy to this. Is a great metaphor for it. It's
Yeah,
really
so
good.
we get to enjoy the ride, and it's not really a ride because we're piloting the balloon. Because if we don't do anything with the idea, it's going to crash and burn, or it may never get
Yeah.
off
It
the
won't even
ground.
take. It won't even take off. Exactly.
Yeah, or
And
it may.
and an idea. Oh no, I was going to say that an idea, much like a hot air balloon, can it can be so it can be volatile. Basically, the flames in that hot air balloon.
Mhm.
I forget exactly how many BTUs. I think it's how you would
Well,
say
we'll go
the
actually
heat.
go in the opposite direction because if I neglect the idea, the literal balloon cools off and it comes down to the ground and it crashes. The idea is gone. So go in the opposite
Right.
direction, right? So I have
Okay. Yeah.
to keep the idea alive. I have to keep working with the idea, rethinking. Do I need to change altitude to catch a different wind? Uh,
Right.
do I need to add more heat to keep it at the same altitude so I stay in the same wind so I go in the same direction? So I am the
Hmm.
one. The idea is directing energy, but I'm going along for the ride because I have to still pilot. I was the pilot who came up with the idea of the flight, the idea, And now I
Right.
have to, as the consciousness, as the pilot of the flight, I have to keep flying the idea because
Right.
energy by itself needs a direction going. It,
Right.
it needs to be focused.
Well,
So
this is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting on many levels.
yeah, so
But
as the
yeah,
pilot, I
yeah.
provide focus, which keeps the energy going, the enthusiasm going to continue with flying the idea, the trial balloon, to see where it's going to take us, consciousness and
Yeah.
energy, where it's going to take
hmm
us. Um, but because, like I say, the intention is to do something, uh, good for self, good for others. It's a
Right.
beautiful journey because of, for example,
Yeah.
this just came to my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey, tell me. Yeah. It's
As I
great.
was as I was flying in the balloon, at times we were very low, and we could say hello to the
Okay.
people that were passing over. Say, how you doing?
Oh,
And they're waving at us, and we're waving at them, and they're excited and they're
that's fun.
smiling. So
Oh, who's ever unhappy when they see a hot air balloon? You know,
exactly. Or let's flip it around the other
especially
way.
coming close to them. You know.
Yeah, let's flip the coin over. Let's look at the other side. Let's say I'm trying an idea of how to deceive somebody, how to, like a used car salesman, how I'm trying to trick
Okay.
somebody. It's not gonna, I'm gonna, as I'm flying this balloon, I don't want to be seen by others because I want to keep what I'm doing secret. Well,
Ah, so you can go above the clouds. You know, not really, but
yeah, so
probably not that high. But
no, I like what you just said because I
oh,
would have
cool.
to, if I wasn't going to be seen by people, then I'd have to fly the balloon in dangerous conditions, like in a cloud
Ah.
at
Oh, so
nighttime.
Like Icarus going too close to the sun. You know,
Yeah,
in a sense.
I
But
would have to pick a way of flying this idea unseen from others, and that's very dangerous in an actual balloon to be in a cloud or or be flying at nighttime.
ah. You
Okay.
know something just hit me with
Yeah.
that thread right there because when you have an idea and you
Mm-hmm.
don't express it versus expressing it. Okay, so basically, like
Uh-huh.
if you're hiding an idea, it's detrimental in a sense. But then if you bring an idea out that's not right or not ready,
Mm-hmm.
its time isn't ready,
Yeah.
that's also dangerous too. It sort of has to be a balance between hiding a really powerful idea
Yeah.
and then or sharing it at the right moment in the right conditions.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. It's if I have an idea but I'm suppressing it, I'm telling that energy, don't be authentic, don't express, and
Exactly.
that's a
And
state of
that's why
it.
people
Mhm.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say that that's why people, I'm assuming this is what my intuition is telling me
Sure,
that's why people, including myself, get frustrated when there's no outlet for
exactly.
expression of an idea, and then when the conditions aren't right, it's sort of like a bottleneck effect or a bottling up effect,
Yeah,
and a pressure builds, and then it comes out in negative
yeah.
behaviors,
You feel like you're in
self-destructive
a,
behaviors.
you feel like you're trapped in a cage, and then that creates anxiety.
Oh yeah,
Right?
absolutely, absolutely. It feels like I was recently at a zoo and saw one of the cats. I think it was a tiger, or I think it may have been a cougar actually.
Uh-huh.
That was the cougar. The cougar was pacing back and forth in its enclosure angrily. I mean, it was frustrated, and I just it was probably the one animal at the zoo that I saw just did not belong in captivity because that
Right.
thing was miserable. That thing probably would have hiked miles a day, uh, just anyway, but not back and forth, pacing back and forth. So it was losing its mind.
Exactly. Yeah, I know, and
It's a similar thing, you know.
it's exactly a similar thing. It's so and then in terms of that bottled up feeling, well, I know at least my motivation for doing a podcast is
Right.
because it is so hard for free thinkers, for deep thinkers to have an outlet, to find
It's
a,
very hard.
it's very hard. So a podcast is a way of talking to somebody, engaging in, well, it's not really a conversation. I mean, between you and me, it's a conversation, but the person listening,
Right.
um, it's a way of finding people that can enjoy a conversation where where let's say
Exactly.
this particular episode might lead to meeting somebody. It's like I say, the trial balloon idea. You
Exactly.
don't know where it's going to take you. In this case, I don't know who I'm going to meet through this podcast. That
It's going to
also,
lead to something just
well,
because
in
in
terms
general,
of
if you do anything leads to something else, obviously.
yeah, but in this case, in terms of who other people that I can have these kind of conversations with to then expand
Hmm.
more diversity and perspectives, but perspectives at a deeper level that I find very refreshing.
Hmm.
And
Well,
mhm,
I just want to jump in because I just want to say
sure,
that on the idea of expressing anything or having
mhm,
things lead to other things, right? I know it's kind of a broad way to put it, but if you put anything out into the world, it will by default, it has to cause something else to happen because I guess that's the nature of karma. The concept of karma is that
mhm.
you do one thing and it's like a rippling effect.
Yeah, it's like a
Like,
wave.
like I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Bruce Lee said something about like tossing a coin, not a coin, maybe a coin, a rock or pebble
Hmm.
into water, and then I'm paraphrasing here, but then there was like a rippling effect, and if it was a big enough body of water, the ripples would come back to you essentially.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
just
Well,
by.
that's true. It's true. It's like
Hmm.
an echo that comes back. And it may be the
Exactly.
echo in terms of a podcast. The echo may be somebody who really found a home here, now echoing back and saying, that really resonated with me. Let me share why. And then we listen
That's
to
beautiful.
that
Yeah.
person and then we hear something that
Hmm.
that resonates back, but it's put in a way that's very original because it came from
That's
that
nice. I like that.
person's own, their own, journey in life and their experiences and the way they see things.
That's beautiful, really. I mean, you
Well,
can't ask for more than that, you know.
and then the other thing is I'm looking at the avatar, the logo, the branding, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, well, look at the color of the sky. It's either a rising sun sky or it's a setting sun sky. Well, in ballooning,
Depending how you look at it.
yeah. So in ballooning,
Yeah,
generally the flights are done first thing in the morning before
because of the calmness of the.
the calmness, because there's these rising air currents called thermals that come from the sun heating up the land, and the balloon, it's not safe to
Yeah.
fly the balloons under those conditions. So,
Right.
but the rising sun means a brand new day to create, a
Nice.
brand new day to
Yes.
start the journey. Usually you don't journey in the dark. Usually in the dark you rest and you get ready for the next day
Interesting.
to take the next flight in the journey towards
Hmm.
where you're where
Right.
you have a vision of going, but again, you don't know that
Right.
that's where you're going to end up. You might think
Right.
that's the greatest place, the
Exactly.
greatest destination possible, not realizing that that wasn't even close to how great the
To
destination could
worry.
be. Um,
Yes. And also too, another thing, when you have a balloon,
yep.
as the metaphor, in the metaphor for having a balloon as an idea,
Uh-huh.
but when you release a hot air balloon
Hmm.
and it launches, it goes higher and higher and higher till the point where everyone on the ground can see it. It's
Oh,
just,
yes, yes, yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then,
It's its own advertisement, essentially, if you want to put it that way.
well, yeah, exactly.
It's a giant billboard in the sky, essentially.
It's true. And then from the pilot perspective, changing altitude changes, it's like you can't see the forest for the trees. So the higher up you go,
Right. Exactly.
the
Yeah,
bigger the picture
exactly.
you see in life of the
Right.
landscape. There's a need to be in the details. There's also a need to be way up high to get a bird's eye view. So
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
that's another theme with ballooning is sometimes you're flying intentionally really low. Sometimes you're flying intentionally really high. Um,
Right.
so that again ties the balloon metaphor into this theme of profound self-help. Um,
Right.
let's see.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds like you have to go with it sounds like there's a flow to ballooning. I mean, it seems like you can't it's not a rigid thing. It's
You
not like
you have
you get behind the wheel and you drive, you're just not
the
that, you know,
energy, like yeah, the energy of an idea, the energy in the balloon always needs a pilot.
to
Otherwise,
guide it.
to
But it's going to
refine.
it'll lead and you'll follow sort of, but you can also sort of lead it too, I guess, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
because the pilot is the one that's observing and seeing that a change needs to be made, that, okay, we're not going exactly in a good direction. Maybe the direction is towards a mountain
You can influence it.
and
You can
there's not enough
influence it.
altitude. So maybe the mountain
Right.
and the idea might be, well, maybe this idea is taking me towards needing $100,000 loan and I really don't want to get involved in debt. So I need to
Yeah.
change direction of this balloon to get away from that
Right.
$100,000 mountain that the actual balloon is, flying towards, as the metaphor. Like there's an
See, I
obstacle
like
there
that.
that I can't clear, or I don't want to clear. I don't want to
Hmm.
go, let's say, in the route of debt. So now I need to change
Exactly.
my perspective, which would be my altitude in the balloon, change my perspective
Hmm.
to be able to see a new direction to head in. Well, when you change altitude in the balloon, the wind
Right.
direction and speed changes. There's so many layers of wind that I saw when I was on the balloon. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So a change in
Okay.
perspective
Wow.
then this says, okay, well, we're going to go away from this expensive idea to manifest, let's say, even this
Uh-huh.
podcast. There's a lot of expensive ways
Right.
to do it with, a
Yeah.
dedicated high performance computer and these expensive
Oh, yeah.
microphones and lighting
Yes, exactly. You
and,
could go all the way with it and have no content.
or you can
I'm
sit
only
here.
kidding, but
No, I know, but or you can just sit here with, a service that costs $100 a year and an iPhone and an iPhone microphone,
I have
So
always loved minimalism for that reason, and ballooning seems to be sort of a minimalist
that's true.
adventure, right? Because I
Extremely
mean,
minimal.
doing something like well, you pilot you're a pilot, and you know
Yep.
that that's of aircraft. I'm saying, so you know that
Yep.
that's difficult beyond the most. The average person. I'll say myself. Okay, I think
Hmm.
I'm relatively average. I'd like to think I'm average, but at least average. I'd like to actually be above average. Okay, I'm wrong about
No,
that.
I
But
think you are. But go
well, thank you.
ahead. Of course you
I
are.
really appreciate it.
Eh,
So, okay, but when you're flying a plane, I have no idea from my own personal experience.
mhm.
I have none. But I imagine, as the average person, that that's very, very difficult unless you've put the time in, and then all of a sudden that's sort of a second nature thing to you. You just kind of, you know what this
Yep.
button does or what this switch does. But then ballooning is probably the polar opposite of that for a pilot who's got your
Exactly.
experience, like,
Well,
you
like
know?
as you're mentioning, I fly a Boeing 737, and
Wow.
that's a very complex airliner. And then
Yeah, I imagine,
when I moved to the
yeah.
balloon,
I'm
instead
laughing.
instead of being in a cockpit of
It
hundreds
sounds
of
so vastly
switches and
different.
circuit breakers and really powerful motors and the thing it can weigh up to like 174,000 pounds. Now I go to
Wow.
this balloon,
Wow.
excuse me, where the only gauges I have are an altimeter that tells me how high I am, a vertical speed indicator which tells me how fast I'm going up or down,
Must be a
and
joy for you to do this.
yeah,
You
there's
get a
one more.
break.
And then the pilot of a balloon needs to be able to see what the air currents are doing. So the pilot might release a helium balloon and track it to see how it changes direction as it goes up, or the pilot of the
Yeah,
balloon, Mhm.
I've been there for that. Yeah, it's fascinating how they do that. It's
or
so smart.
or for going in the downward direction. The pilot might drop a little piece of tissue or a little squirt of shaving cream and watch how
Oh,
that falls
wow.
below the balloon to see what the winds are doing below.
Wow.
And
There's levels to this. It's good.
and then it's just one or two burners to make the heat, and maybe one or two propane tanks, and it's a basket, and it's this big fabric envelope and a bunch of
Yep.
cords and cables
That,
and
yep.
things to extremely
Yeah.
simple. But the
Right.
thing with simple is you're completely gone with the wind.
At the mercy. Yeah. Yeah. Gone with the wind. Well,
So
good.
so
Well put. Yeah.
you have to decide you're flying.
Literally gone with the wind.
Okay, well, as we're talking, but this comes back to the idea of the balloon being an idea that takes
Right.
flight. Excuse me, hold on. is
Much like this conversation is starting to take flight, you know?
exactly. So,
It's good. We're sort of going with a similar
yeah, we're in a
current.
flow, man. So,
Yep, I love it.
one thing that just came up, as we were sharing is the, the, be, the pilot
Yeah.
has to, the pilot of the idea,
Okay.
there's a right, like you said it beautifully maybe 10 minutes ago. There's a right time
Oh,
to
thank
launch
you.
an idea, and there's probably wrong times to launch the idea. With the balloon, there's a right time to launch and there's a wrong time to launch. So one of the wrong times to
Yep.
launch, generally speaking, is at nighttime. Another bad time to
Uh-huh.
launch is in the middle of the day when the air is getting turbulent. Another
Okay.
bad time to launch is when it's too windy. So the
Okay.
so the intelligent way to fly an idea, the intelligent way to fly a balloon,
Right.
is to prepare, pre-flight planning. When is it right to launch this idea? Like, for example, we talked about this
Right. Yeah.
idea, I
Yeah.
think back in September, right? Maybe.
Okay.
Did we talk? When did we
Yes.
talk? September,
Something like
October?
I don't even remember. Honestly, it's been a crazy 6 months,
Yeah. Well, the first
but
time we
it's
talked,
been a while. Yeah.
no, the first time we talked, which was six
Right.
hours, 6 hours straight. Hadn't talked to you
Yeah.
before.
It was yeah. It was never spoke in our lives before
And the idea for the
until then. Yeah.
podcast, the genesis of the podcast came out of that initial conversation. Your wife
Yeah.
introduced us. So that
Right.
idea of you and I talking took off. It landed six
Right.
hours later with the idea that we should do a podcast. We
We gotta
should do
we start recording this. Yeah.
but then the feedback from both of us was this isn't that it's not time to launch it yet. There's too many things
Exactly.
going
Yeah.
on. I think
Exactly.
you're in the process of moving, building a house and moving.
Yeah. Exactly.
We on my side there was recently a death in the extended family, stuff like that.
Yeah. We've
So
had a few in ours. Yeah, as well. I totally understand.
yeah, and then we just had Thanksgiving, we just had Christmas, we just had New Year's. So that's where the balloon thing comes in again, though, is picking pre-flighting properly to pick the right time to launch the idea, to launch the balloon,
Right.
so that it doesn't crash and burn from
Exactly.
you
From
know
lack of preparation or lack of planning or lack of just picking the wrong weather conditions.
yeah, we might
I'm using
crash
that
on
metaphorically
takeoff.
too.
Yeah, we might crash on takeoff. The conditions might be changing.
Exactly.
Let's say a weather front is coming through where right now the winds are calm, but in an hour, the winds are going to be like
Hmm.
20, 30 miles an hour. Um,
Yeah.
so the pre-flight
It's
planning of
so,
launching the
so important.
idea, it's like the energy is there. Like the energy in the
Right.
balloon is there. The propane is in the tank. The burners are ready to go, but the conditions
Exactly.
aren't right. So the energy is there to launch the podcast, but the timing isn't right. It isn't ready to launch it.
Exactly. Okay. That's very important
So
for
this is
anything to
to
be the
me,
right.
yeah, when it kind of gelled the balloon theme because I'm all about a theme, letting a picture speak. I needed the branding
Hmm.
to send them to speak for me, to say, pictures worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. I was
Video.
just thinking exactly that. Yeah.
So how does it all tie together? Well, and it's interesting that
Yeah.
the the logo came before the understanding of the logo came. So,
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
is that a subconscious thing? Is that an intuition? Is that some kind
Yeah.
of some kind of
I know.
mhm.
Well, I just wanted to cut in because I just want to
Yeah,
say when you said that right there,
yeah,
how you did something and then didn't know exactly the real meaning behind it until later.
hmm
I get that with music when I
oh
play
wow,
something or when I write something. Sometimes I won't even know why I wrote it,
that's amazing.
and I will not understand it until later, and then I look back on it and I'm like, oh, that was absolutely perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect, and I can't claim responsibility for it being perfect. It just sort of happened,
Right. That
you
that's
know?
all, that's really cool because that's what we found out when we had that 6 hour conversation is each of us
Mhm.
was getting into a flow that each of us was saying things that we never said
Yeah.
before.
Right.
It's
You
it
told me
was
some pretty deep stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm listening to myself say it, and I'm like, And I think I probably said it many times because it's like I haven't said that before. I just want to let you know I've never said that before. So
Right.
my personal motivation for the podcast is to do it in a format where that flow can get going. For example,
Yeah.
a lot of people, especially that would find this podcast, would probably be interested in Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
I used to listen to like short, um, interviews or things that he was saying, like
Right.
interviews, like short interviews. And I just thought he's a really good guy and really brilliant. And when I started
Yeah.
listening to his lectures where he was not
Ah,
interrupted by an interview or by a
that's
commercial break, when he
ah.
could just keep going for 2.5 hours, wow,
Yeah,
that
he's
was
got his audience. He's got his audience ready to listen to it, and that's helps facilitate it for him too, probably.
yeah. And he's getting, and in his case, he's in front of the audience, so he's getting
He needs
visual
that outlet.
feedback. And then
He needs
sometimes
that
he's taking
outlet.
a question, but he might go like 2 hours before he takes a question. And by the time he's done, he's absolutely exhausted. Um,
Oh yeah, the questions must just lead to so much more flow, too for him. I can
yeah.
imagine him being totally burned out afterwards.
Oh no. And then the same things happened in this phone call because I wrote down some bullet points and some, on,
Yeah, show notes or something.
some things that I really like about the logo, the branding with the balloon
Yeah,
thing, but as you were giving me feedback and you were saying things, oh yeah, 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 and I was like,
right.
something like when I
Yeah,
talked about the sunrise or something like that, it's like
yeah,
I wasn't planning on saying that, but you triggered, like in this conversation, you triggered something where
yeah,
now I can't, I saw even more into this picture than I
exactly.
realized was there before we started the call to talk
And
about
that's what
topics we're going. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that talking points, writing little things, show notes or whatever they call those before the show is so helpful to triggering, a
Yeah.
conversation. But when I hear somebody, I was telling my wife this earlier today that when I hear somebody say something, my mind's already finding hundreds. It's processing in such a way that it's trying to find hundreds of connections to that. So when I meet somebody that I've never met before,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll start talking about something completely unrelated to anything I've ever thought before, or even remotely, I don't know how to even put this into words, but my brain will find some connection with it, and then
Yeah.
I'll be able to have a conversation with them about it.
Wow. That's as I'm looking at the logo again, and it says profound self help. And then I'm like, why did I pick that particular font? And
Yeah,
ballooning, if you think about ballooning, I mean that's antique, man. That's like from the
it's beautiful.
1700s.
Yeah.
That's from the
Oh yeah.
1700s. And the font that
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
chose,
it's cool.
I kept looking for fonts that similar to what I settled with, but that to me looks like a antique font, like something that
Uh-huh. Yeah, I forget. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that does look antique.
it looks
It looks like
more.
it's appropriate for the time.
Yeah, so if you look at the balloon as it's not a new invention, it's a for relatively old invention,
Yeah.
so I looked at other fonts. I went probably through 3 or 4 dozen fonts, and I'm like, modern isn't, no, modern doesn't match this. It something more
It's good that
contemporary.
we're thinking on that level.
And then from confusion to clarity, um, well, that's what happens when when I realize something new, it it it's from the caterpillar to the butterfly. I mean,
Yeah, metamorphosis. Yeah.
yeah. Imagine I mean, I don't know how much a caterpillar thinks, but you know,
Right.
life was lived as a ground creature, and then this
Right.
metamorphosis took place, and now here we're back to a flying theme of a butterfly. And
Oh wow. Oh wow. You know what you just said right there?
what's that?
What you just said right there? I
Yeah.
mean, it's great. I love the metaphor or just the concept. You have this little caterpillar who you're not even sure if it can even think. We're not sure if
And
it's just
and
reacting
and
to
the
things.
and the and the caterpillar had a very limited geography. It wasn't going to go a mile
Yes.
away, but the
It's imprisoned in its body. It's so slow.
well, it's stuck in the forest. It can't get above the.
Yeah.
It can't get a. It can't. It can't go very
It has
far.
it could not spread its wings literally and be free because it's like, it's, you know, what if it's a predator's coming after it? What's it going to run away?
Oh, that's
It
true.
can't.
That's a good point.
You know,
Yeah.
it's basically a little tube with legs, and it can eat.
Uh-huh.
So it's also at the mercy of its ability to find food.
Like
If it's crawling around,
it hasn't reached
it
its
can't
full,
just look around.
and it hasn't reached its full potential. Its full potential
Right.
is to take to the air, to take to the skies, to have a
And to be
life.
beautiful too, beautifully too,
Yeah, and to
glorious, if you
have a
will. You know.
life of kind of going with the wind, because obviously a little caterpillar isn't going to be able to, it kind of has to go with the wind or
Yeah.
avoid the wind,
Yeah.
but it can cover so much more geography. It can go and it can see. There's more things that it can see that catches its interest for it to explore. So that means it's going to have a
Yes.
richer life.
Yes, and it gets a much better diet too because it's able to pick and choose. It's able to shop for what it
Sure.
wants, not just not just walk into its food,
Yeah.
or stumble upon its food, It's
Uh-huh.
very lucky at that point. I guess that
Mhm.
makes me respect caterpillars a lot more now.
Or they talk about, we're both parents and stuff. You talk about,
Right.
giving your children roots, but you also want to give your children wings. You don't want them to stay forever in the
Ah,
house. You want them to be able to take off on their own, which to go have their own life,
right.
um, to
Yep.
to not be a child, to go out and be the master of their own destiny, the creator of their own, um, you know,
Yep.
manifesting their own vision. Or like we were talking earlier, the
Yeah.
I am where I am right now. I have a vision for what I want to be, and to
Right.
get there, I have to build a bridge. But I have to build a
Uh-huh.
bridge. So
Exactly. That just hit me.
yeah, so that's another, and I call
But
that,
just the way you said it, it's hit me.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Okay.
it's, hmm?
No, yeah, we're stepping on each other. I don't mean to step on what you're saying. I apologize for that.
Oh,
I'm
no
just
worries, man. No
excited
worries,
now.
man. There's a little latency, a
It,
little lag in the communication. That's all. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
from confusion to clarity, that really defines, looking back on my life, being confused. Well, why is things like this? Why is a relationship like that? Um,
Right,
it's just that growth and awareness, which comes, it's like all healing originates from being aware of what the problem was. So what I like to tell
right,
people is, the pursuit of happiness, it's actually a pursuit of to discover the cause of unhappiness. And
right.
like we've got it backwards. Instead of where people are, chasing happiness through things and,
Ah,
accomplishments and all this other stuff.
right, right.
And how does someone, let's say the most wealthy person in the world? I mean, we know that these people aren't happy.
Yeah.
We've seen plenty of people that have tons of money and everything you could want, and they're still not happy.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I've
because
no, yeah, I've known a few of them.
they went in the wrong direction. They went external
Yep.
instead of internal, and it's
Which
not.
is very easy to do when you have that kind of wealth too, to
Oh
not
yeah,
feel the
I mean,
need to go internal. Everything's so external for you. It must, internal. Why would you bother? Yeah.
and the world bends over backwards to you know, to who they can make money from.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
so you turn it around, you go internal, and you don't go internal looking for happiness. You go internal
No.
looking for the source of unhappiness, and then by
You're going internal looking for the pain and why it's there and how to
yeah,
not have it anymore. But going external only is only going to prolong that need for that and actually compound that need
it's a
to the point where
distraction.
going in is even harder. Yeah.
It's a distraction to the cure. The cure is to
That's
get rid of the unhappiness. The external things get rid of the unhappiness until you're used to the new normal.
uh,
It's like that new car. It's like, okay, I'm happy for a day, a week, a month, but
yeah, the
then
dopamine wears off after that. You get the dopamine response for the, like, oh, I love this new thing. And then that new thing is no longer new. It's old and boring now. And it's not fulfilling
mhm.
that it's like how social media has this, there's a dopamine feedback loop and it's well known in I guess in the,
Yeah,
circles that are creating things like your Facebooks and, or whatever,
and
social media platforms.
And
They know
sugar
that you get a thumbs up, it's sugar, and you
and
get the same
sugar.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get your thumbs up or you get your
Right.
little sugar rush, and it's, oh, you got to start chasing that like a heroin addict chases it, because similar concept.
So the profound self-help is to get back to the theme, to bring, to tie it all together, is the
Yeah,
profound self-help
sure,
with
yeah,
confusion of clarity is
yeah.
the confusion is, to keep it really, really simple, the confusion is, why am I not happy?
Mm.
Why I want to be happy. Why am I not happy? The clarity is
Huh,
to go inside, not outside, and not chase
that's
happiness
good.
inside, but to discover the source of unhappiness. And this is the
And then
process of looking. Go ahead.
the happiness is there by just default after you remove the source of unhappiness.
Yeah,
The
when you
only thing can
remove
be left is
the suffering of the unhappiness, it
then
doesn't
there's
mean
peace.
you're ecstatic, but you're not unhappy
No,
anymore. And if you're not unhappy, you're not looking for happiness. It doesn't
yeah,
mean
which means you're content. And
exactly.
contentment is, how could anybody say that wouldn't be a good goal, you know?
Yeah, and contentment isn't necessarily happiness, but if I'm content, I'm not concerned about happiness.
Exactly.
So by
That's good.
remove
It's a non-attachment to it.
it's like um, if I don't feel a need to escape, then I don't need the addiction. The addiction goes away. So
That's a great point. I love that.
yeah, so
You know,
mhm.
go ahead. Yeah. Oh,
No,
I just want
so
to add to that.
no the well the
Well, go
addiction
ahead. You go first.
well the addiction is just going back to the same thing that gave you, like you say, the dopamine. Just going
Exactly.
back until it's habitual. Um, okay, but once the need to go back is removed, the addiction
Right.
is removed.
And this is so amazing because I personally have experience with addictive behaviors, and
Everybody,
and I
me
could
too.
say, well, with certain substances in the past where
Oh,
I
okay.
was,
Mhm.
where I can understand that on that sort of level where you're chasing this thing, trying to basically make something go. You're running away and chasing something at the same time. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, okay.
So and none of it's helping, and it's just, all it is making the problem worse. But when you go to the root of it, like through meditation,
Yeah,
I meditate now, and I do other things that are healthy. So I understand, like, it's facing the discomfort, which has gotten me to the point where I am okay with not having those problems anymore because I'm not trying to run away from them in the same way, if
exactly.
that makes any
The
sense.
like the avoidance and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and I can see, well, with addiction, it's to try to do something to make me forget that I'm avoiding something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. And the
and by
addictive mind,
and
yeah.
look, no, and real quick.
Yeah. No, tell me, yeah.
And
Please tell
so
me.
in that moment of inebriation, that's the right word, where I
Yeah.
have forgotten that which I'm avoiding, then I have
Right.
temporarily removed that unhappiness, that suffering, and
Right.
my default state is contentment.
Exactly. It's a feeling of contentment that hasn't been earned through the effort of
Of
facing
actually
the,
getting to the real um,
it's a
cure
cheat.
of
It's a cheat.
unhappiness. Instead of covering up the unhappiness so you don't feel it, it's
Exactly.
you're actually
Facing
eliminating
it.
the source of it. Uh,
Yep.
And that's the hard thing,
And that,
because then you have to look in the mirror. In the mirror, you see things that are not very pretty, but that's
yep.
the only way you have. And and I just had just popped in my head is
Yeah, tell me.
when you leave the ground,
Right.
literally leave the ground. I mean, I'm not a bird. I'm not flying by instinct. I'm
Yeah.
flying.
You technically don't belong there.
Yeah, it's oh
So you
shoot,
got, yeah.
I forgot what were we saying right before I interrupted.
I'm in a flow state right now, so I'm hearing everything you're saying, but like I couldn't repeat it.
Yeah, I just lost what I was gonna say about
That's all right.
the balloon. The what was I saying about the balloon when I first started saying?
Well, we were thinking basically Hmm. Not suppressing pain is where I'm at. I guess that's where I'm thinking we were talking
We'll come
about.
back to it.
And
We'll come back to it.
yeah, if it's exactly, if it's meant to come back, that's a good, okay, this is it's a good lead into a certain point that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about something and you're in a sort of flow state and you do forget, like like I said, I couldn't repeat what we've been saying in this
Right.
entire conversation
Right.
at all. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to listen to it and it'll be like listening to it for the first time. And so, cause I'm in the moment right now when I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not in the, a minute before, I'm not a minute ahead. I don't know what I'm going to say in the next minute. Like, so it's a weird thing. And what I learned is that if you're having a conversation and you forget something, you're like, where was, you get thrown off track for a second, and you're like, where was I? What was I saying? Not trying to find it will make it come back
Right.
a lot quicker, more reliably. Because if you're like, if you say to yourself like, oh, I'll remember what it was, that's fine. And then you let it go and don't try to, it'll probably slip its way back into the conversation again in a minute. It'll probably, the flow will catch up with us again. Or not, but
Well, actually,
instead not being attached to the idea.
here's another one that I can share with you.
Yeah,
That
cool.
is on
Yeah,
the same
well, I
topic
like
of
it.
addiction.
Mhm.
The thing to get addicted to is learning,
Yep, I agree.
because the more you learn, especially about the topics that are affecting you. Let's say you've got a health issue. The more you learn about that health
Exactly.
issue, the more
Yeah,
empowered you are.
more,
That
yep.
leads you to the
And you see
elimination.
yourself doing it. You see yourself doing the behaviors, but now you're knowledgeable of what's happening. Like if you're doing something that's causing a certain chemical reaction in your brain, and you're depleting this chemical,
Hmm.
but you don't know the science behind it, or you've never
Yeah,
taken the time
exactly.
to like what, you know what I mean? But now you're like, you have no excuse at that point. You can't plead ignorance. You're
So
like, oh, I'm
the
doing this to myself.
so what I came up with this maybe 10 years ago. The cure to all addictions is to become addicted to learning, because in the process of learning about that which is um, related to your issue, my issue,
Right.
I
Mhm.
eliminate the issue. Therefore, I eliminate the reason for my addiction. If I
Huh.
was drinking too much because I'm trying to avoid a certain problem, if I would
Right.
become a student and I would keep learning and learning and learning and keep pursuing, what is the source of this problem? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And eventually I figure
Right.
out how to actually cure the problem. That's where we were saying
Right.
before. Once you get rid of
Yeah.
the reason for the addiction goes
Yeah.
away. So the addiction,
Exactly. It just disappears.
the addiction you want is the
It
addiction to learning, because as you grow up, as you grow
yeah.
whole, as you mature,
Right.
as you climb in altitude and see a bigger picture in
Right.
life. So coming back to the flying theme, getting a high, you could say that the altitude of the balloon is how, related to
Yeah.
your broad perspective, and a broad perspective comes from awareness, intelligence,
You're getting a bird's eye
experience.
view, an overview.
Yeah, you can connect more. You can see more about what life is about. So, um,
Exactly. That makes total sense.
yeah, and thereby the the cause of the escape, the trigger to want to escape from the anxiety of the confusion. The confusion is
Right.
no longer there. There's no need to
Right.
escape from something that's not there. So the pathway
Exactly.
is starting with
It frees.
self-help. That.
It is. It is. Well, the way that addictive, somebody
Hmm.
taught me this, and it's been amazing to just really think about for me.
Sure.
It's okay. So
Hmm.
this this guy was a heroin addict, and he was saying that he had, like everybody has problems in his life, right? But what he's done with his heroin addiction is he's
Hmm.
taken all of his problems, all those hundreds or thousands
Yeah.
of problems that people have in their daily life,
Sure.
and he's put them into one big problem, and that's this heroin addiction. And it's just, that's his only problem. He's got to get more, and he's got to maintain
Gotta get
that.
more.
Everything else in his life is no
Because
longer an issue anymore.
it's becoming harder to be distracted. the same dose of
Yeah.
heroin isn't, it's like, no, the anxiety, it's like, he's not getting the numbness. I don't know what heroin feels like, but he's still with his normal dose, he's still remembering his
Yeah.
problem. So now he
Well,
has to medicate even more to just
exactly. It
get to a
becomes
point of forgetting the problem.
exactly what happens is it gets to a certain point where I don't have a lot of experience with that substance. I will say that I do have very
Mm-hmm.
minimal experience with it. Fortunately, it just wasn't my thing. And so, but what I do understand about it is that because I've met some people like when I was living in Portland, um, it's really sad if you think about it because there was this young guy, probably like I say he's in his early 20s, right? And he's homeless and he's a heroin addict and he's on the
Mm-hmm.
streets of Portland. And it's basically I was talking to him about it and he was saying he'd been off of it for a few days, which was really hard for him, and I mean beyond hard. And he was saying that he was really tempted to go back to it because when he was doing it, it felt like the world was like the most beautiful thing. Like for and I fortunately never had that experience with it. So I never, it's okay. It doesn't do it for me. I'm very grateful for that. But for people that
Mm-hmm.
it does, it's awful because especially when they're in a horrible situation where they're living on the street, they've got nothing physically, and then they take this substance which makes them feel like the world is beautiful. It's
Oh,
like
but
they're in this,
they're happy, but
they're in heaven.
they didn't
They
earn it.
didn't earn it. They cheated.
They
They
didn't,
cheated their way to it.
so it doesn't
And
work.
it's so no, and it's evil because it's if you want to put
Mm-hmm.
personify the devil, I would say that for lack of a
Yeah.
not a religious manner,
No, I
but I'm
understand.
saying this is really the devil if you think about it. This is how that I think
To,
the devil would work if there is a devil or was one
yeah, to
would be to make
distract you
something,
to something external to keep you from looking inside.
but it goes like it's even deeper because what happens is they take this and it's so innocent. It's the best thing in the world. They feel so good. There's nothing at all possibly could be wrong with this thing. It's too beautiful for them. And then what happens is all of a sudden the curtains pulled back. It's no longer physically doing that to them because they depleted their chemicals in their brain, like I was
Oh
saying
yeah.
earlier.
Oh, that's
Like,
true.
and then it reveals its true identity to them when it's too
Oh,
late.
I never
And
thought of
now
that.
it's saying, haha, got you now. And if they stop using it, they get physically
Yeah.
ill. And they could actually possibly die from the physical symptoms of that. So now they
Wow.
physically and mentally and spiritually are hooked. It's evil.
I was, as you were
For,
saying, they exhaust those hormones. I was thinking like adrenal
yep.
fatigue, different system, a different whatever, but
Same
just how
same idea. Yeah.
you just
You're
exhaust
you're
the
spending
reserve
you're
of
you're
balance.
spending money that you're spending money you do not have.
Yeah.
Or you're spending money. You're spending somebody told me this too. Another person said
Hmm.
that it's like think about like a bank account,
Okay.
and you got your savings account,
Hmm.
but in this case it's a chemical reserve in your brain. Your brain's a chemistry set, but you're going to the bank every day and you're spending a little bit, but you're never putting any back in. At
Right.
some point it's gonna be empty, and then maybe you're gonna get like non-sufficient funds. You're gonna have
Hmm.
to start paying the bank, and by then, if it's physical and you've depleted all those feel-good chemicals that your body
Hmm.
naturally has,
Yep.
it's a world of hurt. It's not cool.
That's true. Wow. That's very profound. I mean, I learned something there from what you just said. That was really,
Thanks for letting me say it too, because I've never had an opportunity to express it like that, and I figured what better place to do it.
well, I know I've never heard it said like that, and it really resonates. And that's my excitement about the
Good,
podcast is
good.
that we can keep having these kind
I
of
want to, I want to,
conversations. Hmm.
I want to touch people with it. I don't mean to interrupt. I want to touch people with it. But please go ahead.
And then also, all the people we're going to come across that can see. I have well, real quick on the profound self help, just to wrap up. The
Yeah.
reason why it's called that is
Okay.
just to really, really, really cement the name is
Yeah.
there's there like Hippocrates says, if you're not your own doctor, you're a fool. So if we try to put healing, if we try to put healing into the hands of somebody else, number one,
Right.
we don't learn, so we don't
No.
become smarter. So we don't go from confusion to clarity. We're like, oh well, the doctor told me to do this, or the doctor told me to take this. Um,
Right. The blind leading the blind. Yeah.
yeah, to be in a to be on a journey, to be on a flight, to be, on this, of, of getting in terms of, and we're really mostly talking about the mentally, spiritually, physically, the whole being that we are.
Right.
That contentment that you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
There's no shortcut. There's no medication that can create somebody's life. There's no car that can do it. It comes from becoming smarter. And so,
And nobody else can do it for us either.
right. So self-help comes from,
It's self-help.
We're just here to throw out ideas to say, hey, listen, stop shopping for a new car. Go read a book. Go meditate.
Exactly.
Look within.
Exactly.
Look at this. Why am I unhappy?
Exactly.
And start eliminating those sources of unhappiness. So it has
not being afraid to look at it too.
Yeah, it has to be self-help, but it ends up because of the topic, because it's an inward journey. Like you said, nobody else can do it because it's an inward journey.
No.
An external journey,
Exactly.
somebody can take you on an airplane ride. Somebody can, drive the car for you. Someone, whatever, they can give you a gift. But on the inside, where the solution really lies, that's a journey we have to take on our own. We can't take the doctor with us in there.
Right.
We're the observed and the observer in one.
Exactly.
And to explore that inner terrain, it's difficult, but there's no choice.
Yes.
And
there is no choice because eventually you have to face it. At some point, nobody dies in our place, and everybody, as far as I know, does.
I'm sorry. Here comes the addiction to learning, because once that first aha comes, then you want the next aha, because from the first aha you got your happy hormones. But
you get your dopamine,
But with the happy hormones, a certain amount of stress in life just got eliminated because something just got better. It wasn't. It wasn't from a drug that was borrowing from somewhere else to temporarily give a feeling. No.
Right.
This came from a real source, so you're never gonna burn out from enjoying ahas.
Exactly. It's beautiful what you're saying, and I have to say this too, that when you just said that, there are ways to get those feel-good chemicals that are in our body and brain to release in positive ways. Like, for instance, running, the runner's high, endorphins. Endorphins means morphine from within, essentially. So but that's being earned. That's, and there's some comedian that said something, I think it was Artie Lang. I don't want to quote him if he didn't say it this way, but he was a heroin addict. And he said, for, those people that say that runners, it's the same thing as heroin. He says, yeah, you just haven't done heroin before, and that's funny. It's very funny. And yes, very true. I believe from what I've heard, but what I could say is running,
but the runner does release
those, but you earned it. But I've had such deep experiences running. I can't even begin to tell you. It's I've had epiphanies while running. I went for a run this morning. I just felt, it feels amazing when you do it right. And you're earning it, and you feel proud of yourself too. You're not like sitting there stealing a good feeling and then really robbing your own bank, basically,
Yeah. And like you say, the runner,
you're putting money, you're putting money in your own bank.
The couch potato can't get a runner's high. Impossible.
No. And they don't even know it exists.
They don't know it exists.
I know somebody that is exactly the epitome of what you said, and he'll pull the car right next to the place he's going because he doesn't want to walk across the parking lot.
That's crazy.
And he's very unhealthy. But then I, on the other hand, will make my family walk from the farthest reaches of the Walmart parking lot.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If we're going to be at Walmart, we're going to walk.
You're going to walk anyway. You're going to walk a mile in the store. I mean, what's
exactly.
another 500 feet?
Exactly.
It's
an excuse for exercise.
Yeah. So that's my brand in a nutshell right there, man.
It's excellent. It's good stuff, and you're gonna do really well with this.
Well, I couldn't do it without you because this is the kind of,
Well, thank you.
I mean, how could I explain it? Um,
You need the audience, is what you
you,
need.
you need the back and forth to trigger.
Yeah,
It's like for me to
I'm
try
the
to do
same
this
way.
as a monologue. No.
I'm the same way. I was thinking of this idea. It's just
Hmm.
basically it's having somebody to bounce the ideas off of
Sure.
is the way that the ideas really flow. Is what I'm trying to say.
Do you have any
And I
do you have any themes in mind for your brand?
well, we're looking at sort of a cartoonish version of our images, if you
Oh,
will,
okay.
because and for whatever reason, my wife and I agree with it, but she feels like she doesn't want to put her actual face exactly out there
Hmm.
for probably self-conscious, but also for privacy as well too, because you never know where that's going, and you never these days, good Lord, you put the wrong thing out there, you're gonna get attacked for it.
Oh, no,
So,
no doubt.
but
And then also,
you know what I mean?
the thing I like about that idea is that it gives you the freedom to. It's like you can make yourself vulnerable without being vulnerable. In other words, you can really,
Exactly,
really, really express to a bunch of
exactly. It gives you the
strangers, and you
freedom to
don't
do
know
it.
if these are good strangers or bad strangers. Um,
Exactly.
and you
Yeah,
and you want to reach. You're trying to reach that person who really can benefit from your story and vice versa. Um,
exactly.
and who's going to tell their story if they're worried about some creep out there? And so
Exactly.
to not be, and that way you can talk about other people freely because you're not violating their privacy because there's no way for somebody to figure out that's who you're talking about. And then that means you
Exactly.
can be more free in your story, more complete. So I think that's really important.
It is. And well, you just made me think of this too,
Yep.
because on that point right there, I don't like having filters.
Right.
But I
Exactly.
know I do have them, but
Yep.
they're few and far between a lot of the times. And when I get into a real flow, sometimes I'll look back on it and I'll be like, oh no, I shouldn't have said,
Yeah.
why did
I
I
know. I
say
do it
that?
all the time.
And I hate that feeling. And,
Yeah.
I'm second guessing myself. So I had a talk with my wife the other day,
Uh-huh.
and I was saying, well, about this, and she, for podcasting purposes, okay,
Right.
because I do want to respect people's privacy. I want to respect people's anonymity. I don't
Hmm.
want to be the guy that you can't talk to, you can't
Exactly.
trust because I'm not gonna,
Hmm.
that's gonna go on the podcast. But in some sense, that's kind of how I am, I think, and I can't really change that. So, but I have to realize that it's kind of okay in a sense. And if somebody's talking to me, they should just be aware that, this could wind up on a podcast somewhere, but I will try my best not to, disrespect them,
Well, no, because it's the whole intent is to
to help,
be real and
to be real. Yes.
and to
And
be real.
and not to be afraid. Yeah. Not to
Well,
be
and to be
afraid.
real means you're having relationships. So how can you be real when you're
Real,
also not talking about these other relationships?
real.
And
Yeah.
and
Real relationships. Yeah. The word real relationships. I think are
yeah, that's
related.
true. That's true. It's wow, man, this was awesome. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours as well. Yeah.
Um,
Always fun to talk with you.
I feel like my
Here's to many
flow.
more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many topics I want to get into.
Yeah.
Um, but
We covered a lot. I think it's
oh, we
good
did.
to,
Oh, this was fun.
it's,
I mean, I
yeah.
can see why we talked for 6 hours a couple months ago, 3 months ago. That was a
There's gonna be
blast.
many more of it.
And that was the
Yeah.
thing is, it's like, man, we should have recorded this, but we had no idea, um, that all this kind of stuff. But well, why don't
Well,
we
yeah.
wrap this up then,
Okay.
so we can
Sounds
keep the
good.
theme to
Keep it
the
alive.
what's this profound self help thing and
Yep.
the why were certain things chosen, what meaning
The
does it
Genesis
have.
story.
Yeah, the Genesis story. So because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but then
Yep. Same
my
here.
my
I'm
left brain
censoring myself right now. Yeah.
my left brain is going, category, or
Yes.
whatever.
My brain says I want to keep going, but my intuition is telling me we did it.
Yep.
It was perfect.
Cool.